Welcome to the FI Newscast, where we bring you relevant news in the food and beverage industry. Today is Friday, September 8th, 2023. I'm Susan Choi, your host for this show. We have two special guests for you today. Their names are Robyn Carter and Brooke Stewart of 𝗟𝗲𝘁 Innovation, experts in all things food and beverage, and we will talk to them about brand disruption. But first, let's cover some of the top stories from this week so far. We begin this week with M&A activity in the CPG space. John B. 𝗟𝗲𝘂𝗏 and Son acquired Treehouse Foods snack bars business unit for $63 million. The acquisition is expected to add between $105 and $120 million in incremental net sales for the remainder of 𝗟𝗲𝘂𝗏's 2024 fiscal year. The acquisition includes a manufacturing facility in Lakeville, Minnesota. Meanwhile, a Bloomberg report named C&S Wholesale Grocers as a possible suitor for some Kroger and Albertsons stores that will need to be divested as part of the company's merger plans. C&S is said to have partnered with SoftBank for the transaction. The Kroger-Albertsons merger would result in a combined company operating 5,000 stores, but the deal has met some opposition at the state and federal level due to anti-competitive claims. In the plant-based sector, some good news for one company. Eat Just Inc. has just announced that they have secured new funding to aid their shaky financial standing. The 𝗟𝗲𝘁 Foundation, a nonprofit organization, has agreed to fund the plant-based egg maker with $16 million in new capital. Reps for Eat Just have said the funds will be effective in helping the company become profitable. Right now, the businesses do not make any money and had to lay off about 18% of its employees in February. The welcome news of extra funding comes amidst a string of bankruptcies affecting other plant-based companies, such as the Tattooed Chef, the Meatless Farm, and the Very Good Food Company. Fresh earnings are out for Dave & Buster's Entertainment, Inc. The dining and gaming hub fell short of Wall Street estimates in its second quarter. Its stock price has been down about 15% in the past 12 months. However, revenues went up 16% year over year. The company is hopeful of its future, having recently opened several new locations in the past quarter alone. CEO Chris Morris says that they are, quote, laser focused on optimizing business and growing revenue, adjusted EBITDA and cash flow. In restaurants, Sweetgreen is making moves to attract more customers. The salad chain has started adding ingredients such as salami and barbecue sauce to its menu, items that would never fit in with the company's original lineup of flavors. Since the pandemic, Sweetgreen has expanded its U.S. locations beyond city centers, opening new shops in the South and the Midwest, and serving a wider range of customers. It's now trying to attract non-salad eaters. Sweetgreen is making a big push to focus on menu innovation and has hired former executives at Burger King Corp. And Chipotle Mexican Grill, Inc. to cook up new ideas. And finally, Samsung joins a host of other conglomerates betting big on AI. They recently launched Samsung Food in more than 100 countries. It's a meal planning and suggestion platform based on a similar system called Whisk, which Samsung acquired in 2019. What it does is provide consumers with hundreds of thousands of recipes, create shopping lists, and get inspiration from other users. They also integrated with certain e-commerce platforms to provide that online shopping option. The conglomerate plans to combine Samsung Food with another platform, Samsung Health, by the end of the year. And those are your top stories. We're going to turn now to our special guests. Their names are Robyn Carter and Brooke Stewart, and they are from 𝗟𝗲𝘁 Innovation, a firm which helps top brands create innovative business strategies. The company has worked with such brands as Mars Wrigley, Unilever, and Mondelez. Robyn is the founder and CEO of 𝗟𝗲𝘁, and Brooke serves as Senior Vice President. I got a chance to talk to them about brand disruption, a trend that has been on the rise in recent years. Let's take a look. All right, ladies, thank you for joining me. Let's get right into it. Brand disruptors. All right, so let's get into the first question. Brooke, can you tell me what is the definition of a brand disruptor? How would you explain that term?
Yeah, I mean, a disruptor brand is generally a game changer in an industry. They've spotted a gap in the market or a better way of delivering what a customer really needs. They might not be the first one to do it, but they're certainly the best one at it. And so we certainly see them as they give that perception of delivering something new. Like I said, even if it's not, or the brand, or the only brand around that can give the customer really what they're after.
Got it. Got it. And Brooke, can you further explain when you say they're delivering something new, could it be, does it have to be isolated just as they're delivering something new in the product, or could they themselves be disrupting the category? I've heard it thrown around, there'll be like a female business owner being like, I'm a disruptor because I am a female business owner. Could that be also categorized as a disruptor, or is it usually just focused on the product?
That's interesting. I mean, certainly there's disruptors in anything, right? So it could be them as the person coming into a space that was mainly filled with men before, sure. Or it's a different product or service. We like to think of it as like things that you never knew you needed, but now suddenly you do.
Got it. Thank you for that. And continuing with that, along that line, tell us, what are the key elements of being a brand disruptor? What makes up that title?
Yeah, Robyn and I were talking about this a lot, obviously in advance of this, and we were saying that disruptors really focus on solutions and not the problems. And so in doing that, like I said previously, it's really become something that you never knew you needed to have. And I think we've all experienced that, certainly through Instagram and TikTok and that kind of buy it now culture of really just being like, wow, okay, I needed that. Now I have to get it. And it's really looking at what a product or service is in a totally different way. Thinking outside the box, even during COVID, we saw so many real fine dining restaurants offering takeout for the first time. So that's something like really taking something and doing it differently, even if it's not new.
I was just going to say another attribute of a disruptor is not focusing on the competition and not necessarily worrying about the competition, but thinking more about the customers. And I think that's kind of an interesting push for brands too, to think about, what is the need of the consumer versus what is my competition doing? So how can I solve something in a new and different way, or how can I address something in a new and different way? And I love this example of 𝗟𝗏𝘁 they make the pasta, the packaged pasta and refrigerated products as well. And we met 𝗟𝗏𝘁 and his daughter-in-law years ago at their restaurant at the New York flagship when it had opened. And they explained that his competition wasn't other companies that might make pasta. He was the first one to make packaged pasta and commercialize it in Italy. His competition was the grandma at home. So he was trying to solve a problem for like these busy moms and busy people at home. He wasn't thinking too much about who are the other players that might enter the marketplace. So he really focused on addressing a need, and obviously has been quite successful with that. So I think that's kind of an interesting way to think about it as well.
I was wondering, Robyn, if you could explain to us. Is brand disruption, is that something you can strategize, or does it have to come organically, or can there be a hybrid of the two? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I think for the smaller brands, I think it comes more organically. There's a founder somewhere who's saying, there's a problem, there's a need that I see that either I'm personally experiencing or I'm noticing, and I don't seem to find a solution. So I'm going to try to solve that. And so I think there's a lot of that's being born organically. And I think, the cost of entry is lower than ever. So you see a lot of brands across categories, coming to us from these small founders, trying to be disruptive, reaching out with new benefits and trying to solve problems. We also see big companies, big brands, trying to be disruptive as well, because it's a very noisy marketplace. So whether you're thinking about what's happening on the shelf, or you're thinking about all the brands that are communicating with your consumers via social media all the time, bigger brands are trying to figure out how they can be disruptive too. And for bigger brands, I think it takes a lot of strategy. It often involves them having to move outside of their comfort zones in terms of thinking about packaging and distribution and the actual innovation itself or themselves. When we're working with brands, we're trying to help them to kind of think outside the box, to bring new perspectives into the room, to, when we're bringing influencers into ideation sessions for innovation, we're doing that as well, trying to help them to kind of move beyond the constraints that they know exist in their categories, to think differently and to kind of approach things from a new lens. So that's a lot of what we're trying to do to help brands to be more strategic here. But I think it's also about communicating effectively too, for these disruptor brands. And Brooke, do you want to talk about that a bit?
Sure. I mean, I think looking at how to utilize content creators effectively is super helpful. And we've seen so many brands really launch in that way and become disruptors just from social media on its own. And I think when we look at a brand like 𝗟𝗏𝘁, that, of course we have Lululemon that's super successful and people love it. But 𝗟𝗏𝘁 comes around and they really took advantage of using micro influencers in the fitness space to help them. And I think brands could go even further with that by really engaging with their consumers and treating their consumers, even if they don't have a lot of followers, but really engaging with them online when they're creating content and they're enthusiastic about the product or service that they're offering. I think that could be a huge win for brands.
We are going to take a quick break, but we'll have more with Robyn Carter and Brooke Stewart of 𝗟𝗶𝘁 when we come back. Stay with us. We are back with more from Robyn Carter and Brooke Stewart of 𝗟𝗏𝘁, having a great conversation about brand disruption. Let's continue. I want to get into the next question. I love this one, a fun one. Let's get into examples. Ladies, can you give us a few great examples of successful brand disruption? Brooke, why don't we start with you?
Sure. One that comes to mind is 𝗟𝗶𝗴, the prebiotic soda that came on the market. And, again, they really utilized social media and TikTok. And they have a huge piece too, where what I was speaking to earlier, with really also utilizing consumers to take charge of content. And then it became a TikTok challenge with utilizing the soda. So I think it's really an interesting case of taking something that is soda and appealing to those that want a healthier choice, but they want something that tastes good. So it kind of fits a lot of different food trends that we talk about, but then creating that disruption in the space.
Yeah, agreed. And I feel like 𝗟𝗶𝘶 also is super focused on who their consumer is and what that consumer is looking for. So I think that's something that we see with disruptor brands as well, is this kind of laser focus on the consumer and what their need is, and this, sort of not getting super distracted by trying to be all things to all people. So I think that's one thing that makes 𝗟𝗶𝘶 a great example too. And another example that we talked about is Liquid Death. And this, I think, the first time I saw it, I think was at Expo West a couple years ago. But Liquid Death is this water brand, and I'm sure you've seen it, Susan, and many others as well. It's in this can. It looks like this kind of tall boy can that looks like for bikers and sort of hardcore. And what we love about this example is it takes everything that you believe to be true about water, like all the existing imagery around, these natural springs and volcanic filtering and all this kind of stuff, and, kind of a more feminine personality too, and just kind of flipped it on its head to be this like hardcore in a beer can kind of thing, which really was just disruptive and attention getting. And I think really interesting, it's a talk piece when you've got it in your hand. The brand is sort of carried through their language, their personality, through all their communications, through the language on pack, through the way they're naming their subsequent products. I think they're a great example of a disruptor. And I think also addressing a need. Everybody needs to stay hydrated. It's not just kind of like women going to the gym, right? That need to drink water. And it's also, it's also an example of just kind of taking a different tone of voice and bringing that to life for water. So yeah, it's a great example that we love talking about.
Definitely resonating with those examples. We at the Food Institute have been following 𝗟𝗲𝘂𝗶𝗹 around for a long time. And just you mentioning liquid death, Robyn, that brought a smile to my face. I mean, it's even just the brand name is, it's great. It's an eye catcher, right? Wanting to go more into running themes, right, that we see, these are two great examples. And to what you both have mentioned, whether it's focusing on the consumer, using, influencers, social media, types of strategies, right, that may push a brand towards brand disruption. Brooke, do we see those in the examples that you guys just mentioned? And what else do we see, in commonalities in these two, successful examples?
Influencers are certainly a part of this, and using influencers in the same way that Robyn was talking about with consumers, like really understanding who your consumer is before you go off on to do an influencer campaign. So when you understand, okay, I want to reach someone that's interested in health and wellness, you need to focus on, okay, maybe that person is aspirational in that way, and that they are creating healthier recipes, either for themselves, their families, and how is your product getting integrated into their daily lives? And does it make sense? Is it believable to other people? Because I think we're all savvy consumers now, and we all can kind of do the smell test and realize that person just got paid. They're not doing that. They're not eating that. That is not on their radar. And so we want to make sure that it's believable, that it makes sense that this person is actually not only an influencer that's getting paid to do the campaign, but also a consumer that loves the product and service you're offering.
Absolutely. Robyn, would love to hear your thoughts as well. Any running themes, that you see as a link between, liquid death, 𝗟𝗂𝘂𝗶𝗹, these examples of successful brand disruptors.
Yeah, I mean, I think beyond the communication piece, which I think can't be overstated, like that's so important, as Brooke mentioned. But I think, the examples that we see are brands that are really turning category conventions on their heads, taking everything you believe to be true about a category and doing it differently, making people see it differently or think differently. An example that I love is, is Spanx, right? I know it's not a food example, but Sara Blakely came from outside of that space, said there's a problem. I can't find a solution. I'm going to make one up. And because she wasn't constrained by everything she knew to be true about making pantyhose, right? She was able to solve for the problem, even though people were saying, well, this isn't how it's done. And this isn't, the way that we do it. She just kind of said, well, why not? And so I think that that's a kind of a common theme is sort of thinking beyond what we know to be true about a category and coming at it from a different perspective and from a real needs-based perspective, from a consumer needs-based perspective. I think that's a really important piece, and I think a common thread. And then I think another thread is really staying in your lane. So understanding who my core consumer is and working super hard to understand their needs and to meet that person's needs, and to not try and sort of expand beyond that to be all things to all people. I think you have to kind of focus on really surprising and delighting this core consumer, and then others for whom that consumer, that lifestyle is aspirational, who are sort of on the fringes of that, will gravitate inward towards that, rather than you trying to be sort of everything to everyone all at once.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. Thanks for that, Robyn. Just to wrap things up as a final question, as I'm sure you ladies both well know, brand disruption, that can be a pretty lofty goal to try to achieve, to put on top of your checklist as a business, as a company, Jump Rope Innovation. At Jump Rope Innovation, you guys see a lot of clients. You've had a lot of experience working, with different companies, different brands, to succeed, whether it's within their category or just in general. Robyn, what would you say are the top 3 things that companies, need to focus on right now moving forward, just for success in general?
Yeah, so I think there's a temptation to try and be disruptive because everyone's trying to be disruptive, and we have to figure out how to do it too. But I think that we don't want to be disruptive just for the sake of being disruptive. I think we have to make sure that there's a real consumer insight behind what brands are doing, and, you know, look for that sort of unmet need, that unspoken need, that kind of frustration point, you know, for consumers, and then find a way to meet that need, and then make it really easy for the consumer to kind of join in, whether it's make it easy for them to physically purchase the product. If it's something that you're talking about that's, you know, on social media or whatever, don't make me click through 8 things to try to get to that, right? Make it super seamless for people, but also make it easy in that your consumer will you are where the consumer is. You're meeting that consumer where they are, you know, with your communication, so that when they see it, that's sort of a resounding yes for them. You know, so just making sure you're sort of really insight driven and that you're easy for your consumers to access. I think that's, you know, one really important point. Another is, you know, this point of not being constrained by everything you know to be true in the category. And that can be hard. And it can be hard for big brands to kind of get outside of what they know to be the rules, I guess, you know, in their category. And so whenever we're doing ideation, for example, we're bringing in influencers, we're bringing in cross-functional teams, because we want that kind of cross-pollination and that expansive thinking that will help you kind of get beyond what already is to look at the possibilities for sort of what could be, by bringing these kind of new perspectives.
Definitely great wisdoms from you both. Thank you so much. Robyn Carter, founder and CEO of Jump Rope Innovation, and Brooke Stewart, Senior Vice President of Jump Rope Innovation. Ladies, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks so much, Susan. Thanks for having us.
My sincere thanks to Robyn Carter and Brooke Stewart of Jump Rope Innovation for the great conversation about brand disruption. Before we go, we're going to take a look at what's coming up in the food industry in the coming days. On September 13th, the Bureau of Labor Statistics releases latest consumer price index numbers for the month of August. And on September 14th, they also released the latest data on the producer price index. And I want to mention once again that FI is partnering with 𝗂𝗏𝘁 𝗂𝗶𝗹 to provide live stream coverage of its Food and Beverage Trade Expo in Dallas, Texas from September 27th to the 28th. We'll have interviews with key figures in the industry as well as on-the-ground event coverage. You can go to foodinstitute.com for more information, and in an exclusive bonus, FI members can register to attend this event for free. Click on the link in the description of this newscast to find out more, or you can scan that QR code right on the screen. And that's our show. Thanks so much for watching. I want to remind you to like, comment, share, and subscribe to our social media channels. The support really makes a difference for us. Thanks again for watching. Have a great weekend and take care.